Grace Parker, a widowed mother, finds hope when the reclusive billionaire Jack Harrison receives an unexpected letter from her child, Max Parker, addressed to Santa Claus. What happens when a simple Christmas wish carries the power to change not just one life, but three? Stay until the end to discover how one letter to Santa turns into an unforgettable journey of love, hope, and redemption. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. Holly Brooks stood at the front of her classroom, her heart swelling with pride as she surveyed the faces of her students. The room, though small and worn, buzzed with energy. Posters of various educational themes plastered the walls, their colors faded but vibrant in the way only a place filled with laughter and learning could be. It was a chilly December morning, the kind that hinted at the impending holidays, but inside the classroom, warmth radiated from the children seated at their desks, each one a unique spark of potential. All right, class, who can tell me what they love most about the holidays? Holly asked, leaning against her desk, her long, curly hair cascading around her shoulders. A chorus of eager hands shot up, each child vying for the chance to share their thoughts. "I love the cookies," shouted a girl with pigtails, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "And the lights," chimed in a boy with a mischievous grin, his eyes shining with excitement. Holly smiled, letting their exuberance wash over her. The holidays were a magical time, even in their underfunded school nestled in a struggling neighborhood. Holly made it her mission to bring that magic to her students, transforming their humble classroom into a festive wonderland each December. She believed that every child deserved a chance to experience the joy of the season, no matter their circumstances. "Those are wonderful, but what about the spirit of giving? What does that mean to you?" Holly prompted, using the moment to steer the conversation toward the importance of kindness and community. As she spoke, her eyes fell on Max Parker, a bright-eyed boy sitting at the back of the room. Max was a dreamer, his imagination a boundless sea of creativity. His sketches were filled with fantastical creatures and faraway lands, yet his smile often betrayed an underlying sadness. Holly had noticed that he sometimes stared out the window, lost in thought, as if he were searching for something just beyond his reach. "Max, what about you?" she asked, breaking him from his reverie. Max looked up, his big brown eyes widening as he realized he was being spoken to. I think giving is about making others happy," he said softly, though his voice was steady, filled with an earnest sincerity. "That's a beautiful answer, Max," Holly said, her heart aching slightly for the boy. She could tell that he carried burdens far heavier than those of other children his age. And remember, even the smallest acts of kindness can make a big difference. As the class continued, Holly couldn't shake the feeling that Max needed a little extra love and attention. She decided to stay after school that day, hoping to speak with him. As the other students filed out, she approached Max, who was busy organizing his pencils into neat rows. "Hey, Max," she said gently, kneeling beside him. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" He looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to cautious curiosity. "Sure, Miss Brooks. I just wanted to check in with you," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "You've seemed a bit quiet lately. Is everything all right at home?" Max hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. "It's just, things are kinda tough right now," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "My mom works a lot, and sometimes she looks sad." Holly's heart sank at his words. She had heard snippets about Grace Parker, Max's mother, and the struggle she faced since the loss of her husband. It was no secret that life had dealt them a hard hand. "I understand, Max. It's okay to feel that way. Do you think maybe you could help your mom find some joy this holiday season?" Max's eyes lit up for a moment, the glimmer of hope shining through. "I want to, but I don't know how. Why don't you write her a letter?" Holly suggested, her mind racing with ideas. "You could tell her all the things you love about her and maybe share your favorite memories. Sometimes, reminding someone of the good times can help brighten their day." Max nodded slowly, a smile creeping onto his face. "That sounds nice. I'll do that." "Great. And remember, Max, you're not alone. You have people who care about you, including me," Holly encouraged, ruffling his hair playfully. Now, go home and think about what you want to write. I can't wait to hear it." As Max left the classroom, a sense of purpose filled him. He carried the weight of his mother's sadness on his small shoulders, but Holly's encouragement sparked a flame of determination within him. He wanted nothing more than to see his mother smile again. At home, the atmosphere was quiet. Grace Parker was in the kitchen, her tired eyes scanning the cluttered countertops. The bills had piled up, and the holiday season only seemed to amplify the pressure. She moved through the motions, preparing a simple dinner while trying to mask the heaviness in her heart. "Mom?" Max called as he entered, his voice breaking the silence. "In here, sweetheart," Grace replied, her voice warm despite her weariness. She turned to face him, and for a moment, the weight of her troubles faded as she took in the sight of her son. He had a way of making her feel lighter, even on the darkest days. Max approached her, his little face beaming with excitement. "I want to write a letter to Santa." Grace raised an eyebrow, puzzled but intrigued. "Oh, what do you want to ask him for?" Max hesitated, his thoughts swirling. I want to ask him to make you smile again," he confessed, his voice earnest and sincere. Tears pricked at Grace's eyes. She knelt down, capturing Max in a warm embrace. "Oh, honey, you don't have to ask Santa for that. Just seeing you happy makes me smile. But I want you to really smile, Mom. Like you used to," Max insisted, his small hands gripping her shoulders. "I think if I write it down, it might help." Grace's heart swelled with both pride and sorrow. She realized how perceptive her son truly was, how he understood the struggles they faced, even at such a young age. "Okay, let's write that letter together," she said, her voice steadying. "It might just be the magic we need." They settled at the kitchen table, Max's little brow furrowed in concentration as he picked up a crayon. The paper was plain and slightly wrinkled, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the intention behind the words he was about to pour out. "Dear Santa," he began, his handwriting shaky but determined. "This year, I don't want any toys or presents. I just want my mom to smile again. She's been sad since Dad went away." His voice faltered briefly, but he pressed on. "I love her so much, and I want her to be happy. Please, if you can, make her smile." Grace watched, her heart aching at the vulnerability of her son's words. She could feel the weight of his wish, the innocence behind it, and the love that radiated from him. It was a simple letter, yet it held more power than any grand request could. As Max finished signing his name with a flourish, he looked up at his mother, hope shining in his eyes. "Do you think Santa will get it?" Grace smiled, wiping away a stray tear. "I believe he will, Max. And even if he doesn't, just writing it down is a step toward making it come true." In that small kitchen, amid the remnants of their struggles, a flicker of hope ignited. Max's wish was only the beginning, a testament to the love that bound them together. Little did they know that the universe was already conspiring to bring that wish to life. A journey that would intertwine their lives with someone unexpected, someone who had lost their own holiday spirit and was about to rediscover it through the eyes of a child. Jack Harrison stood in his opulent living room, adorned with garlands of shimmering gold and twinkling lights, yet his heart felt as empty as the vast space surrounding him. The fireplace crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the walls, but the warmth it emitted couldn't reach the chill that had settled deep within him. He was a billionaire, a man of power and influence, yet as he gazed out at the winter wonderland that enveloped his estate, he felt more like a ghost haunting his own life. "Another holiday season alone," he murmured to himself, his voice barely breaking the silence. He ran a hand through his tousled hair, sighing heavily. The memories of Christmases past flooded his mind. Laughter, family gatherings, the thrill of giving and receiving gifts. But those memories felt like fragments of a dream long gone, smothered by the weight of solitude that had come crashing down on him after the loss of his wife 2 years earlier. Jack turned away from the window, his gaze landing on a stack of unopened mail on his mahogany desk. He had long since lost interest in the material excess that surrounded him. As he shuffled through the letters, his eyes caught a glimpse of a brightly colored envelope, the kind that seemed to radiate innocence and joy. It was addressed to Santa Claus, and without thinking, he picked it up. "How quaint," he said, rolling his eyes slightly. But as he unfolded the letter, his curiosity began to stir. The handwriting was neat, a child's careful script, and the words jumped off the page, filled with unadulterated hope. "Dear Santa," it began, "my name is Max Parker, and I am 8 years old. I have never really had a Christmas, but this year, I have one wish. I just want my mom to smile again. She's been really sad since my dad died. Thank you for listening." Jack felt an unexpected tug at his heartstrings as he read the letter. The innocence of the boy's wish, the simple yet profound desire for his mother's happiness, resonated with him in a way he hadn't anticipated. It was a stark contrast to the extravagant wishes he was accustomed to seeing from the wealthy elite who usually sent letters to Santa through elaborate charity organizations. Who was this boy? Jack wondered aloud, his heart aching for the child he had never met. He could almost picture Max, perhaps a bright-eyed boy with a hopeful smile, just like his own son had been before he lost him. The thought of another child suffering because of loss felt unbearable to him. As Jack set the letter down, he felt a flicker of something he had thought was lost forever. Purpose. What if he could help Max's mother find joy again? The idea blossomed in his mind, and for the first time in years, he felt a rush of excitement. He imagined surprising them with gifts, perhaps even arranging a special Christmas celebration. But how? He was a man who moved in circles far removed from the struggles of a single mother living in a modest neighborhood. Maybe I could use my resources, he mused, pacing the room as he formulated a plan. I could enlist the help of my staff, or even a charity. The thought of giving back to someone in need ignited a spark within him. Yet, as the excitement began to take root, he was quickly met with a wave of doubt. What if I mess this up? He questioned, sitting down heavily in his plush armchair. He stared at the letter again, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. What if they don't want help from someone like me? Jack's mind raced as he considered the logistics. He could research local charities that supported families during the holidays. He could anonymously donate gifts, or perhaps even provide a memorable experience for the mother and son. The possibilities seemed endless, but so too did his uncertainties. How could he approach them without revealing his identity? Would they accept his help, or would it come across as pity? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his assistant, Sarah, knocking gently on the door. "Mr. Harrison? You have a call on line 1. "Not now, Sarah," he replied, waving his hand dismissively. His mind was too consumed with the letter and the boy's heartfelt wish. "Can you schedule all my calls for later?" "Of course, but is everything all right?" she asked, concern etched on her face. Jack realized he must have looked troubled. "Just thinking," he replied, forcing a smile. "I'll be fine." As Sarah left, Jack returned to the letter, tracing the boy's neat penmanship with his fingers. "Max Parker," he whispered, committing the name to memory. He envisioned the boy's face lighting up with joy and an image of Grace, a woman who had faced unimaginable hardship, filled his mind. Jack's heart swelled with determination. He wanted to be the one who could bring a spark of joy back into their lives, to be the Santa Claus that Max believed in. "Okay, let's do this," he said resolutely, standing up and heading to his desk. He grabbed a blank sheet of paper and began to jot down ideas. Gifts? A Christmas tree? Perhaps a festive dinner? He would need help organizing everything, but he was more than willing to reach out to his contacts. But even as he felt a sense of purpose, a nagging fear clawed at his insides. What if they think I'm just some rich guy trying to buy their affection? He thought, shaking his head. No, this isn't about me. It's about them. With a deep breath, he began to outline a plan. He would start by gathering information about Max and Grace, perhaps through local schools or community centers. He could create a profile of their needs without revealing his intentions. The more he brainstormed, the more the vision became clear. A surprise Christmas for them, one filled with love and warmth. Just as he was lost in thought, a loud crash echoed from the hallway outside his office. Jack sprang to his feet, his heart racing. "What now?" he muttered, moving towards the door. He opened it to find one of his staff members, a young intern named Kevin, picking up a stack of files that had fallen to the ground. "Sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "Don't worry about it," Jack interrupted, his mind still racing with ideas about Max and Grace. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just a little clumsy today," Kevin replied, standing up and brushing off his pants. "Is there something you need? I could help with, well, anything." Jack paused, considering the offer. "Actually, yes. I might need your help with something special. It's a bit unconventional, but are you up for a challenge?" Kevin's eyes widened with curiosity. "Absolutely. What do you have in mind?" Jack smiled, the weight of his loneliness lifting slightly. "Let's just say it involves spreading some holiday cheer to a couple of deserving people. I'll explain everything over lunch." As they walked back into the office, Jack felt a renewed sense of hope. Perhaps this holiday season wouldn't be as lonely as he had anticipated. Maybe, just maybe, he could become the Santa Claus that Max wished for, and in doing so, find a piece of his own lost spirit along the way. As the days rolled on, the holiday season began to weave its magic around the community, and with it came a noticeable shift in Max Parker. Holly Brooks observed him closely, noting how his spirits began to lift, and how an infectious excitement enveloped him like a warm blanket. He arrived at school each morning, his backpack bouncing against his small frame, a grin plastered on his face as he chatted animatedly with his classmates about the upcoming Christmas break. "Miss Brooks! Miss Brooks!" he exclaimed one morning, bursting into the classroom like a whirlwind. "I can't wait for Christmas. I even made a countdown calendar." His eyes sparkled with uncontainable joy, and Holly couldn't help but smile back at him. "Wow, Max, that's amazing. How many days do we have left?" she asked, kneeling down to meet him at eye level. "Just 10. 10 days until Christmas," he replied, his hands flying around as he gestured animatedly. "I can almost feel the snow, and I know Santa is coming this year." Holly's heart warmed at his enthusiasm. "That's the spirit. Have you made your list for Santa?" she inquired, remembering the touching letter he had written just weeks ago. Max nodded vigorously. "I did, but it's not what you think. I didn't ask for toys or games. I just want my mom to be happy again. That's all I want." His smile faded slightly, a shadow passing over his features as he thought of Grace's struggles. But then, in an instant, his eyes lit up again. "Maybe if I believe hard enough, it'll happen." Holly felt a pang in her chest. She admired Max's unwavering hope, but she also recognized the weight of his wish. "You know, Max, sometimes the holidays have a way of bringing joy back into our lives, especially when we have people who care about us. Like you, Miss Brooks." Max beamed. "You care about all of us. You make school fun." The praise made Holly blush slightly, and she ruffled his hair affectionately. "Thank you, Max. You're a wonderful student. Just remember, it's okay to wish for happiness, but it's also important to spread it around, too." The days passed, and Holly couldn't shake the feeling that something special was happening for Max and Grace. She had noticed little changes in their lives, like the way Grace's smile seemed a bit brighter and the warmth in her eyes a little more pronounced. Unbeknownst to Holly, these changes were carefully orchestrated by none other than Jack Harrison. Jack had taken it upon himself to fulfill Max's heartfelt wish. He had been moved by the boys' letter and was determined to bring some light into their lives. Under the cover of darkness, he arranged for deliveries to their apartment. Boxes filled with food, warm winter clothes, and small toys that would bring joy to Max. He even hired a local handyman to fix a few things around their home that had been neglected for far too long. "All right, let's make this happen," Jack said to himself as he stood in his lavish office, surrounded by the trappings of wealth that felt increasingly hollow. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Can you deliver those items to the Parker residence tonight? Make sure it's a surprise." The man on the other end of the line responded affirmatively, and Jack hung up, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over him. He had never been one to engage in charity, but this felt different. This felt right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the city, Jack made his way to the Parker apartment complex. He parked his black SUV a few blocks away, not wanting to draw attention to himself. He watched as a delivery truck pulled up, and a few moments later, the driver unloaded boxes and bags, carefully placing them at the entrance of the building. Jack's heart raced with anticipation. He wanted to see the moment Max discovered the gifts, but he also knew that he had to keep his presence a secret. It wasn't just about the gifts. It was about the hope and joy he wanted to instill in both Max and Grace. Later that evening, as the moonlight filtered through the window, Max and Grace returned home after a long day. Max bounded into the small living room and immediately froze, his eyes widening at the sight before him. "Mom, look, what is this?" Grace followed him inside, her tired expression shifting to one of disbelief. "Oh my goodness," she gasped, taking in the sight of the boxes filled with goodies. "Where did all this come from?" "I don't know, but look, there are toys. And food," Max exclaimed, his voice filled with wonder. He hurried over to the nearest box, tearing it open as if it were Christmas morning. The contents spilled out, revealing a brand new toy truck, warm mittens, and a selection of snacks. Grace knelt beside him, her heart swelling with gratitude and confusion. "Who would do this?" she murmured, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Max shrugged, a huge grin spreading across his face. "Maybe it's Santa. I told him I wanted you to smile again." Grace couldn't help but laugh through her tears. "Well, it looks like somebody was listening." She wrapped her arms around Max, squeezing him tightly. "This is incredible, sweetheart. You have such a big heart." As they unpacked the boxes together, Grace felt a warmth spreading through her. She didn't know who had done this, but it felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope and lightness in her heart. Meanwhile, Jack watched from a distance, his heart swelling with happiness as he witnessed the joy he had brought to their lives. He felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. This was a different kind of wealth, the kind that came from giving and helping others. In the following days, Jack continued to surprise them with small acts of kindness. He arranged for a local bakery to deliver fresh pastries each morning, filling their home with the warm aroma of baked goods. He even anonymously sponsored Max's school field trip, ensuring that he wouldn't miss out on the experiences his classmates enjoyed. Holly noticed the changes in Grace and Max, her heart filling with hope that perhaps the holiday season was working its magic after all. She often saw Grace walking with a newfound spring in her step, and Max's laughter echoed down the hallways of the school, brighter and more infectious than ever. One afternoon, Holly found herself sitting across from Grace at a small cafe where they often grabbed lunch. Grace sipped her coffee, a blissful smile plastered on her face. "I can't explain it, Holly, but something amazing has happened. I feel like I'm coming back to life." Holly leaned in, intrigued. "What do you mean? You seem different, happier." "It's wonderful to see." Grace's eyes sparkled with emotion. "I don't know who is behind it, but we've been receiving these incredible surprises. It's like someone is looking out for us. I can't help but feel grateful, and it's making me want to smile again. Maybe it's the magic of Christmas," Holly suggested, her voice gentle. "Sometimes it takes a little spark to reignite the joy we thought we had lost." Grace nodded, her heart swelling with hope. "You're right. It's as if someone out there knows what we need, even when we don't." As they chatted, Holly couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Grace's newfound happiness than mere coincidence. She couldn't help but wonder who was behind these surprising gestures and what their intentions were. Meanwhile, Max continued to dream big, convinced that the spirit of Christmas was alive and well. He often shared his thoughts with Holly during their lessons. "Miss Brooks, I think Santa is real. I think he's magic." Holly chuckled, her heart warmed by his innocence. "Well, Max, sometimes the magic comes from the kindness of others. It's like spreading joy, just like you do every day." As the holiday approached, the air was thick with anticipation, and both Grace and Max felt the warmth of the season wrapping around them. They were unaware of the man who had selflessly ignited this change, but they were undeniably transformed, their lives touched by the spirit of giving and the power of hope. The air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine as Holly Brooks sat in her favorite cafe, a cozy little place with warm lighting and cheerful holiday decorations. The sound of laughter and clinking mugs surrounded her, a stark contrast to the struggles she often faced in the classroom. She sipped her coffee, watching the patrons, her mind drifting to her students. Among them, Max Parker stood out, not just for his bright smile, but for the depth of his character. She had grown fond of him, recognizing the weight he carried despite his youthful innocence. As she stirred her drink, the bell above the cafe door jingled, drawing her attention. Grace Parker entered, wrapped in a thick scarf and a coat that looked as if it had seen better days. Holly's heart warmed at the sight of her. Grace had been one of the most resilient mothers she had ever met, navigating her way through life's challenges with grace, albeit often weighed down by her burdens. "Hey, Grace," Holly called out, waving her over. Grace's face lit up with a smile, and she made her way to Holly's table, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Hi, Holly," Grace replied, her voice brightening the air around them. "I didn't expect to see you here. I come here for the coffee and to escape the chaos of the school sometimes," Holly admitted, gesturing for Grace to sit down. "How about you? How have you been?" Grace hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "It's been a bit rough, to be honest. The holidays are hard without, well, you know." Holly nodded, feeling the weight of Grace's words. "I can only imagine, but I've seen some changes lately. Max seems more optimistic. It's like he's excited about something." A soft chuckle escaped Grace's lips. "He's been talking about Santa a lot. I think he's really hoping for a miracle this Christmas. Children have a way of dreaming big, don't they?" Holly said, leaning forward. "What about you, Grace? What do you dream about nowadays?" Grace looked down at her coffee cup, tracing the rim with her finger. "I used to dream about a life filled with happiness, a home where laughter filled the rooms. But it's hard to dream when you're just trying to survive each day." Holly's heart ached for her. "You deserve joy, Grace. It's okay to want that, especially during the holidays. Have you thought about what would make you smile again?" Grace's eyes met Holly's, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "I suppose I want to feel happy again, for Max's sake. He deserves a mother who can smile." "Then let's make that happen," Holly said, her voice firm with determination. "What if we find a way to bring some holiday spirit into your lives? Maybe a little celebration, just you and Max? You could decorate a tree, bake some cookies." "I don't even have the energy for that," Grace replied, shaking her head, but Holly could see the faintest hint of interest in her eyes. "What if I helped you?" Holly offered, her enthusiasm bubbling. "I can come over, and we can do it together. It'll be fun." Grace hesitated, her brow furrowing in thought. "I don't want to be a burden to you, Holly. You have your own life. Trust me, helping you would make me happy," Holly insisted, her eyes sparkling with sincerity. "And it might just be what you need to lift your spirits." Taking a deep breath, Grace felt the weight of Holly's kindness. "Okay," she finally said, a small smile breaking through. "Let's do it. Maybe a little holiday spirit wouldn't hurt." "Great." Holly beamed, her excitement infectious. "We'll plan something fun. And remember, it's all about the little moments. You and Max can create your own magic." As they continued to chat, Grace felt a warmth spreading inside her. For the first time in a long while, she began to believe that joy might be within her reach. Meanwhile, back at home, Max was eagerly anticipating the arrival of Christmas. He had been enchanted by the idea of Santa Claus, and in his mind, the magic of the season was alive and well. As he rummaged through the living room, he stumbled upon a beautifully wrapped gift tucked away under the small, scraggly tree they had managed to salvage from the local lot. His eyes widened, and his heart raced. He approached the gift with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Who could it be from? He had not asked for anything, not yet. The card attached to the gift read simply, "For a boy with a big heart." Max's fingers trembled as he tore off the wrapping paper, revealing a shiny red toy truck. It was exactly what he had dreamed of, a truck that could race across the floor, taking him on adventures far beyond their small apartment. He could hardly believe his eyes. "Mom!" he called out, his voice ringing with joy. "Come quick." Grace rushed into the room, her expression shifting from confusion to surprise as she saw the gift in Max's hands. "Where did that come from?" she asked, her brow furrowing in curiosity. "I don't know. Look at it, Mom. It's amazing," Max exclaimed, cradling the truck like a precious treasure. "It must be from Santa." Grace knelt beside him, her heart swelling with emotion. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Are you happy?" "Happy? I'm the happiest boy in the world," Max said, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. He began to race the truck across the floor, making engine sounds and narrating a grand adventure. As he played, Grace watched him, her heart both heavy and light. She felt a flicker of warmth ignite within her, a reminder of the joy that could still exist despite the hardships they faced. This little gift, whoever it was from, had brought a smile back to her son's face, and that made all the difference. In a few days, Holly and Grace planned their holiday celebration, filling the air with laughter as they shared stories about their lives. As they prepared, Holly couldn't shake the feeling that something wonderful was about to happen, not just for Grace and Max, but for herself too. Meanwhile, Jack Harrison, the lonely billionaire who had inadvertently set this chain of events in motion, found himself contemplating the next step. He had never expected that a simple letter from a child would affect him so deeply. The more he learned about Grace and Max, the more he felt drawn to them. With the holiday event coming up, he decided it was time to meet Grace in person. He wanted to see the woman who had captured his heart through her son's innocent wish. The night of the event arrived, and the community center was awash in twinkling lights and festive decorations. Jack stood at the entrance, his heart racing as he scanned the room, searching for the familiar faces of Grace and Max. When he finally spotted them, his breath caught in his throat. Grace looked radiant, her laughter ringing like music as she and Max decorated cookies with holly. There was a warmth about her that drew him in, her smile igniting a flicker of hope within him. As he approached, the atmosphere felt charged with possibility. Little did he know, this encounter would change everything. The holiday lights twinkled in the crisp evening air, casting a warm glow over the streets of the neighborhood. Holly Brooks stood at the corner of Maple and Fifth, her heart fluttering with a mix of hope and concern as she observed the growing connection between her student's mother, Grace Parker, and the reclusive billionaire, Jack Harrison. Just days ago, Grace was a woman burdened by grief and hardship, and now, she seemed to radiate a newfound light, a spark ignited by Jack's kindness. Holly wasn't sure if she should feel happy for Grace or worried about the implications of their budding relationship. As she walked closer to the small cafe where Grace and Jack often met, Holly couldn't help but overhear their laughter. It was a sound she hadn't realized she missed. Grace had always been strong, fiercely protective of Max, but there had been a sadness in her eyes that had been hard to ignore. Today, however, as Holly peered through the frosted glass window, she saw Grace leaning forward, her eyes sparkling like the stars outside as she listened to Jack. "And that's when I decided to start my own company," Jack was saying, his voice rich and warm, contrasting sharply with the icy chill of the winter night. "I figured if I could create something that brought joy to people, it might help fill the void in my heart." Grace chuckled, her laughter dancing through the air. "You're telling me that you went from a corporate job to what? Making toys?" "It's not just toys," Jack replied, a playful glint in his eyes. "It's about creating experiences, bringing families together. I wanted to make something magical." Holly felt a twinge of warmth as she watched them. Jack's earnestness seemed to bring out the best in Grace. He had a way of drawing her out, of making her feel seen and appreciated, and it was a sight that filled Holly with a sense of hope. But, as she stood there, a nagging concern crept in. Would this man be the right person to step into Grace's life? To step into Max's life? With a deep breath, Holly decided to join them, pushing through the cafe door. The warmth enveloped her as she stepped inside, momentarily stealing her breath. "Hey, look who's here," Jack greeted, his smile wide as he motioned for Holly to join them. "Hi, Holly." Grace beamed, her cheeks flushed with happiness. "We were just talking about some of the craziest things we've done in our lives." "Oh, really? I'd love to hear about it," Holly replied, pulling up a chair. As she settled in, she couldn't help but notice how Jack leaned toward Grace, hanging on her every word. "Tell her about the time you went skydiving," Grace urged, her eyes gleaming with mischief. Jack chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck sheepishly. "I was young and reckless. I thought it would be thrilling, but I ended up screaming like a little girl. I can't picture that. Holly laughed. You're too composed for that. Looks can be deceiving, Jack replied with a wink, and Holly felt her heart flutter slightly. There was something magnetic about him, a charm that was hard to resist. As the evening wore on, they shared stories of their pasts. Jack spoke of the loneliness that accompanied wealth, while Grace opened up about the struggles she faced after losing her husband. The barriers between them began to dissolve, replaced by an understanding that was both profound and comforting. I've lost a lot, you know? Grace said quietly, her voice tinged with emotion. Sometimes it feels like the world is too heavy to bear. But Max, he keeps me grounded. He's my light. And you're his, Jack replied softly, his gaze never leaving her face. You're doing an amazing job, Grace. I admire your strength. Holly watched the exchange, feeling the warmth of their connection enveloping her like a cozy blanket. However, just as she began to feel secure in this moment, her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her back to reality. Excuse me for a moment, she said, stepping away to take the call. As she moved to a quieter corner of the cafe, she couldn't shake the sense that something was about to disrupt the harmony they had built. When she returned, she found Grace and Jack deep in conversation, their laughter echoing in the small space. It was a beautiful thing to witness. However, Holly couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in her gut. Everything okay? Grace asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Yeah, just a work thing, Holly replied, forcing a smile. I'm glad to see you two enjoying each other's company. Grace's face lit up at the compliment. Jack has been so kind. It's just nice to have someone to talk to. Jack nodded, his expression earnest. I think it's important to share our stories. It helps us heal. The conversation shifted, but Holly's mind was racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that life was about to change dramatically for Grace and Max. The joy in Grace's eyes was genuine, but would it last? Just as she was about to voice her concerns, a familiar figure entered the cafe. Grace, a voice called out, sharp and demanding. Holly turned to see a man she recognized, a figure from Grace's past, someone who had once been a part of her life but had long since faded away. His presence was jarring, and Holly felt a chill sweep through the room, extinguishing the warmth that had just enveloped them. David, Grace said, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you here? David's tone was accusatory, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the room, landing finally on Jack. Who's this guy? Jack straightened, a protective instinct kicking in. I think you should leave, he said firmly, his demeanor shifting. Grace looked between them, her expression torn. David, please, this isn't the time. Oh, it's the perfect time, David shot back, stepping closer. You think you can just pretend I don't exist? You think you can move on without facing your past? Tension crackled in the air, and Holly felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on her chest. She wanted to intervene, to shield Grace from the storm that had just entered their lives, but she knew that this was something Grace had to face. David, I've worked hard to rebuild my life, Grace said, her voice steady but strained. You have no right to come here and disrupt it. Holly exchanged a glance with Jack, who was visibly tense, his jaw clenched. The dynamics had shifted, and suddenly, the warmth of the holiday season felt distant. I have every right, David sneered. You think you can just erase me? You think I won't fight for my family? Jack took a step forward, positioning himself protectively beside Grace. You need to back off. This isn't how you resolve things. Holly watched, her heart racing as the confrontation unfolded. She knew this was a pivotal moment, one that could either strengthen Grace and Jack's bond or shatter it completely. The holiday lights outside flickered, and for a brief moment, it felt as if the world had paused, waiting to see what would happen next. The air was thick with tension as the visitor, a tall man with a rugged appearance and a haunted look in his eyes, stepped into Grace's modest living room. He was a ghost from her past, someone she had thought she left behind. The moment he opened his mouth, a chill ran down Grace's spine. Grace Parker, he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to fill the room. Grace looked up, her heart pounding. Who are you? She asked, her voice steady despite the anxiety that clawed at her insides. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" The man stepped closer, and Grace instinctively took a step back. "I'm Jake. Jake Thompson. We used to run with the same crowd back in the day. You remember?" "Not really," she replied curtly, her mind racing. Jake had been a part of her life she had desperately tried to forget. "What do you want?" Jake's expression shifted, a mix of regret and determination crossing his face. "I want to talk about the past, Grace. The way you left, it wasn't right. You abandoned everyone. You need to face the truth." At that moment, Jack entered the room, having just returned from an errand. He paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. Grace, visibly shaken, and the man who seemed to loom over her like a dark cloud. Jack felt a surge of protectiveness. "Grace, is everything okay?" he asked, his voice firm and steady. Grace turned to Jack, her eyes pleading for understanding. "Jack, this is—" "Jake," he finished, stepping forward, keeping his eyes locked on this uninvited guest. "I don't think you're welcome here." "Oh, so you're the billionaire who's been playing Santa Claus, huh?" Jake scoffed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "What do you know about Grace's life? You think throwing money around will fix everything?" "Actually, I'm not just throwing money around," Jack replied, his voice calm but edged with steel. "I'm trying to help her. Unlike you, I care about Grace. I want her to be happy, not dragged back into whatever mess you're trying to stir up." "Happy?" Jake laughed bitterly. "You think she's happy? You don't know the first thing about her. She's running from her past, but it's not that easy." Grace felt her heart racing, a mix of anger and fear. "Stop it, Jake. You don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice rising. "I've built a life for myself and my son. I've worked hard to leave that past behind." Jake's eyes narrowed. "But it's still there, Grace. You can't just erase it. You think people have forgotten? I'm here to remind you that you can't hide forever." Jack stepped closer to Grace, a protective wall between her and Jake. "You're wrong, Jake. Grace is not defined by her past. She's a mother, a survivor, and she deserves to be treated with respect." The tension in the room crackled, and Grace felt a wave of gratitude wash over her at Jack's unwavering support. But it was clouded by the weight of Jake's words. "What do you want from me, Jake?" she asked, her voice steadier now. "I've moved on. I don't need you in my life. I want you to stop pretending that everything is perfect," Jake urged, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You're still that same girl who was lost and broken. You think you can just erase that with a little kindness from a rich man? It doesn't work like that." Jack's jaw clenched. "You're wrong about her. She's made a life for herself, and she's found happiness even in the smallest things. Just because you can't see that doesn't mean it's not true." "Jack," Grace said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "I can handle this. I need to face him." "No, Grace," Jack replied, his voice firm. "You don't have to face this alone." He turned his gaze back to Jake, an icy calmness in his eyes. "If you think coming here to threaten her will do anything but push her further away from you, you're mistaken." Jake's expression faltered slightly, and for a moment, Grace thought she could see a flicker of self-doubt in his eyes. But then he squared his shoulders, trying to regain his composure. "You're only seeing one side of things. What happens when Max finds out who you really are? That his mother used to be someone completely different?" Jack's expression hardened, and Grace felt a chill run down her spine. "You leave Max out of this," Jack warned. "He's a child. You have no right to drag him into your vendetta against Grace." Jake's face softened, if only for a moment. "I'm not trying to hurt him. I just want her to face reality. You can't build a life on lies." "Enough," Grace shouted, her voice echoing in the small room. "I'm done with this conversation. You don't get to come here and dictate my life or my choices. I am not that girl anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake stared at her, his expression unreadable, and the weight of his presence began to wane. "Fine," he said finally, his voice low. "But don't say I didn't warn you. The past has a way of catching up to you." With that, he turned and left, the door closing behind him with a definitive thud. Grace felt her heart race, the adrenaline fading, leaving her shaken. She turned to Jack, who was watching her with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping closer. I don't know," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I thought I had put all of that behind me. I thought I was done with it." Jack's expression softened. "You are done with it, Grace. You've built a life for yourself and Max, and you're stronger than you know. Don't let him take that away from you." Tears filled Grace's eyes as she looked at Jack, his support grounding her. "Thank you for standing up for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Always," he replied, reaching out to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You're not alone in this." Just then, the sound of small footsteps echoed from the hallway, and Max appeared, his face lighting up at the sight of Jack. "Hey, Jack, did you bring me a surprise?" Grace quickly wiped her tears, forcing a smile for her son. "Not yet, buddy. But Jack was just helping me with something." Max tilted his head, sensing the tension in the air, but not fully understanding it. "Okay," he said. "Can we decorate the tree now?" "Of course." Jack grinned, the warmth returning to his voice. "I've got some really cool ornaments we can use." As they moved to the living room, Grace felt a sense of relief wash over her. She would face whatever came her way, but with Jack by her side, she felt more capable than ever. It was time to embrace the present, to celebrate the small joys, and to protect her little family. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the room as they began decorating the tree. Laughter filled the air, and for the first time in a long while, Grace felt a flicker of hope. The past would not define her. Instead, she would shape her own future, one filled with love, joy, and perhaps even the magic of Christmas. In that moment, as Max excitedly hung ornaments and Jack joined in with playful banter, Grace knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The shadows of her past faded, replaced by the bright light of the life she was building now, a life filled with possibilities and love. And as she looked at Jack, she couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, he was the missing piece she never knew she needed.